Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your Libertarian car guy. And thought we'd do a quick walk around here of the 2017 Subaru BRZ. This car and its Toyota badge twin, the 86, get a slew of new updates, the first major updates the car's had since they were introduced. You can probably see one of them, get a closer shot of it. You can now get a performance package that includes Brembo powder-coated brakes and an upgrade wheel tire package and firmer riding suspension and shock valving. So it handles a little bit better. It's always been a great handling car. In fact, that's this car's chief virtue. It actually is a sports car. It's for people who like to drive fast in the curves as opposed to a straight line. Some people complain that the car hasn't got enough power, that it could be a little bit quicker. And again, it's a sports car. Mazda's never had any issues selling the Miata, even though it's not a Corvette Z06 in terms of how quickly it accelerates. Both these cars get to 60, actually all three of these cars, this car, the BRZ, the Toyota 86, and the Miata, all get to 60 in a little over 6 seconds, about 6.3 to 6.5, depending on whether you go with the manual transmission or the available automatic transmission. And yes, you can get this car with an automatic if you must. Some things about this car that are kind of interesting in terms of contrast with the Miata. Obviously, I'm focusing in on the one that's obvious, and that is that it's a coupe. It's a metal-roofed car, whereas the Miata is a soft-top car, and that includes the new Targa roofed version of it. And some people, me included, just aren't convertible people. I'm not slamming convertibles, I'm just not a huge fan of them. They tend to not age well, and of course they're more vulnerable, not necessarily to the weather anymore. Mazda, for example, has done a fantastic job of sealing the top so they don't leak. The problem is that anybody with a knife can just slice one open, either just to be mean and hateful or to get at your stuff. It's a little harder to break into a car with a metal roof. The other thing that this car has, it's a bit less obvious. I mean, if you look at it, it's a two-door sports car, but it's a 2+2 sports car, which means you got a back seat. Now, granted, it's not much of a back seat, and it sure isn't much legroom, but it's a back seat. The Miata has not got any back seats at all, and therefore you can only carry one passenger in the Miata. This thing, nominally 2+2, has 4 seats and supposedly can carry 4. That's ridiculous. You can't carry 4 people in this thing. But you can carry 3, the third person sitting sideways in the car. So that's actually pretty handy. Let's see, what else? They have updated the car a little bit on the inside as well as the outside. This particular car, let me see if I can get it going here and show it to you. Bear with me just a moment. Okay, it has, or this particular car has, this additional gauge cluster here, which shows you additional information about the vehicle and its operation. And that's configurable. You can go through that and scroll up different menus. That's available in the mid-trim, limited, and the new yellow series. Let me kill the engine here. It's not available in the base as it comes premium, which is really, you know, it's not a blue light special, but it's, you know, it's designed to be affordable, and it's only about 25,000 bucks. Let's have a look at something else that's kind of cool about the engine, which, by the way, is something else Mazda hasn't got. Love the Miata, it's a great car, but this is kind of neat. There's your Boxer 2.0 liter engine, which Subaru has thoughtfully not put one of those hateful, ugly plastic covers on top of, and instead they have applied a powder coat or similar finish to the intake tract, which is kind of neat. You can see the engine. Now, it doesn't have a turbo, so it doesn't make massive power. Horsepower is up a little bit. It's up to 205 this year from 200 last year, if you get the manual. The automatic car is still at 200 horsepower. But it's a very different feeling, sounding, and behaving kind of engine than the Miata. So again, it's a counterpoint. It's not necessarily that it's better, it's just different. What else should you know? I guess the main thing to know about this car, and it's kind of a sad story, and the sad story also applies to its Toyota badge twin, the 86, is that they're sort of fish out of water. I think these cars would sell fantastically if they were badged under a different brand. The problem for the BRZ is that Subaru people who shop Subarus, generally aren't people who buy rear-wheel drive, two-door sports cars. They generally like four-door cars, and they like the power going to all four wheels. Toyota people, on the other hand, tend to be people who buy cars like the Corolla and the Camry and the Prius and the Avalon, all fine cars, but far from being sporty cars. So it's debatable whether this car is going to survive much longer, frankly. I looked up the sales stats, and Subaru has been selling so far this year roughly about 420 a month of these things. Toyota's been selling a little bit more, but the numbers are not very high. And the main concern that I would have with this car is that if they do decide to discontinue it, and that decision would probably happen within the next year or so, because the current model, even with the updates, it's about 4 years old now, so it's right about getting toward the end of its first-gen life cycle, and they'd need to recommit to a pretty significant redesign in the next couple of years. Anyway, if they don't do that, and if the car just goes away because of slow sales, it may be difficult to find parts for these cars down the road. Not so much the engine, because the engine is shared with other Subarus, and that won't be an issue. But I'm talking about things like trim, body panels, stuff like that can get difficult to get and expensive to get, and that makes owning a car harder. Miatas have been around for decades. I think they're up to 1 million now, total production, or very close to it. Which is a lot of cars, and it's a very popular car, and Mazda's probably going to keep on producing it for the foreseeable future. And that is one of the reasons why it's so popular with club racers. Aside from the fact that it's a great track day car, parts for it are everywhere, and they're pretty inexpensive. It's probably a bit more expensive to get parts for these Subarus. It's still a lot of fun car, fantastic handling car, and it's just a different experience than the Miata. And I personally like the fact that it does have the hard top and it does have the back seats, though they are small. Anyway, I'll have a full review up at epautos.com shortly. There's also something up there about why we don't have CNG-powered vehicles, natural gas-powered vehicles anymore, or at least not commonly, and why aren't they being touted as aggressively as, say, electric cars. So thanks for viewing, and we'll catch up with you again soon.